Welcome to Read Between the Lines, a book podcast. I am your host, Molly Southgate, and today I'm interviewing
Michelle Major.
Hi, Michelle. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Molly. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Can you tell me about your books?
Yes, I would love to. I call them sweet and sexy contemporary romance. I like a lot of banter and chemistry between the characters, but I also like emotions. I write a lot of small town romance with big casts of secondary characters and typically some four-legged animals who steal the scene. So a little bit of everything.
Excellent. Can you tell me some specifics, like what book titles?
Yeah, you bet. So my latest release is called The Merriest Magnolia, and it is the second book in the Magnolia Sisters series. It's a world set in, for me, the fictional small town of Magnolia, North Carolina. And the books are about three sisters who didn't realize they were related until their very famous and very eccentric artist father died and left them a sort of strange inheritance in this small town that he kind of ran. And so they weren't expecting to find out they had to come together and work to kind of make amends for some mistakes he made, but they get to know each other. Each of them falls in love in the small town because I do love romance. But the series is also a lot about the family relationships and discovering people who you actually want to have as your family and the family you choose.
I love the found family trope more than anything in the world. So how did you decide to write something about families?
I think a lot of my books, The Merriest Magnolia actually is the 30th release I will have with Harlequin. And a lot of my books focus on families and friends who become families. But specifically with this one, I had a family friend, my mom's best friend, who I've known my whole life, who, because of an ancestry DNA type test, discovered that she had a secret family that she had no idea about. And I've certainly heard that, out in the world these days with those kind of tests, but it was the first sort of experience that touched somebody I knew. And I was back home for one Christmas and we talked about it a lot, and it just kind of got me inspired to explore that situation.
That is so fascinating. Did you base any of the characters off of her?
Not specifically, but I have a tendency to use little quirks about people I know in, plant Easter eggs in my stories. A lot of times my mom and my husband are the only ones who really, I think, discover everything because they know me the best. So my husband will text me and my mom will call and say, I know who this was based on. So that's sort of fun.
Yeah, that's always fun, too, to plant little ones. I've had that happen to me before with one of my friends reading something like that. Could you give any specific examples of, specifically funny ones or anything?
Well, one specific, and this is a pretty big one. It's not exactly a secret, but there is one of my favorite characters in the Magnolia Sisters series is the mayor of the town, and his name is Malcolm Grimes, and he is actually based on a coach that my daughter, who's a competitive volleyball player, had, and he was a coach who I was not sporty at all growing up, and I really could literally walk into a door or wall at any given moment. But my kids take after my husband, and this coach was somebody who just meant a lot to my daughter and really helped her and has remained close to our family. So when I wanted to make a character in the town who would sort of look after everyone, I immediately thought of Mal. And so I asked him if I could create a character based on him. And it's been fun because my daughter still plays volleyball, and everyone in that community likes to read the books because they feel like they know one of the characters personally.
That is so cool. So you mentioned briefly that you were not very sporty as a kid. Did you like to write or read when you were that age?
I read a ton. Everybody in my family jokes that I was the easiest kid to take care of because all I wanted to do was be left alone to read, which I think a lot of writers, were avid readers to begin with. I did write some, although I didn't really find my voice or my genre for a while, but I did love to read, and I was also a dedicated theater geek. So that made me very happy when I was younger.
When you were younger, did you like to write plays and stuff?
I did write plays, actually. Yes, and I would write them for the school and little skits. And I wrote a lot of poetry, and I was a journalism major in college. So I certainly had a background in loving to write.
That is so cool. Did you said that you used to perform the plays and stuff?
Yes. So I did. I was an actor in high school, and I actually thought about going into it in college. And then it was my dad who said, could you please pick a major that you could make a living at? So I chose journalism.
Oh.
And then became a fiction writer. So I feel like now I've proven to him that you can have a career in whatever you want as long as it's your passion.
Yes. So do you prefer writing fiction over writing nonfiction?
I do. I do like writing both, and I enjoyed journalism, and I think journalism gave me a lot of fundamentals as far as crafting sentences and crafting a story. But I really do, I'm somebody who I make up stories in my head. I love listening to people's conversations and thinking about the world in different ways. So that is a passion of mine, and I think fiction really fits that.
That's awesome. So how did you choose to write romance?
I think romance actually chose me. I did not grow up reading romance like a lot of people do. And when I was in my early 30s, I had a job where I was traveling around the country, and I was in technology, and it was during the .com bust, and I was in human resources, and I was laying people off all around the country, and I developed this fear of flying. I think I just didn't want to get on these planes and go ruin people's lives, basically, is what it felt like I was doing for my job. And one day I picked up a romance novel in an airport bookstore and was totally captivated and engrossed, and it made me forget about all the miserable things going on in my own life, and it was a total escape. And at the same time, I realized it's sort of the stories that they're like bedtime stories in my own head, where I would think about as I was drifting off to sleep, were actually romance novel plots. And that was when the kernel of the idea for me was born of, oh my gosh, this is something that I could do.
That is that is such an inspiring story. So
I'm glad.
So how do you craft two characters knowing that they have to end up together?
I always start with the emotion. And I know a lot of writers do it different ways. I don't think there's one right way to begin a story, but mine always begin with a character. And sometimes it's the hero and sometimes it's the heroine. And then from there, when I'm putting these two people together, a lot of my thought process revolves around thinking, why are they perfect together? And why can't they be together? So, it's that push and pull that readers want to go on in that journey through the story of, a reader can see the little sparks of why they might be perfect together, but we have to put them through a lot before they get to their happily ever after.
Yeah. So you were saying that you like to put them through a lot. Do you prefer like writing or reading like slow burn type things, or things that are more like fun and sweet, or like darker? What type?
I like a little bit of everything. And I think, a really well-written story, I'm along for the ride no matter what. And if I believe, I think for me as a reader and also as a writer, I have to really believe in the heart of the story where, if it's a funny situation just for, that feels contrived or just for the sake of throwing something out there, that's not interesting to me. But when it comes from an authentic place of deep emotion, that's great. That's my favorite. Although I do strictly at this point write contemporary romance, my favorite thing to read when I'm not writing is historical romance. And it always has been. It's my candy. I love it. I love the time frame. There's so many details in it, and I admire the authors who do it really well. So that's probably my go-to read.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, historical romance is so good. This is just a personal question. Have you ever read the book Alex and Eliza?
I have not read that.
It is so good because I love Hamilton and I love history, and it is a beautiful romance book.
Okay, I'm writing that down, and that's going to be my next one. I always, that's sort of my reward to myself when I finish a draft or I finish a big deadline, is then I go on a little bit of a book binge. And because the thing about being a writer and putting out several books a year is it limits your time for reading. So I tend to batch read now. So that's on my list. Thank you.
Yeah, you would definitely love that one. Oh, okay. So you said that it kind of limits your time for reading, but like how much of the time when you're writing do you spend on the outline, and like how much time do you actually spend writing, or do you write an outline?
I do write. I wouldn't exactly call it an outline, but I do plot pretty significantly. I am, the terms are out there, the plotter and the pantser. I think I'm a pantser at heart, where I would love to just let the story take me wherever it wants. But for me, that isn't extremely efficient. So I use the sort of there's a screenwriter named Michael Haig who does a lot with story structure and the power of myth and the story archetypes. And so I kind of use that 3-act structure, and I do know my beginning, middle, and end, and my beats of where I'm going in the story. And typically, though, I only outline in detail 3 chapters ahead, because I do like to leave myself a little bit of flexibility if, I get a brilliant, I like to think they're brilliant idea mid-writing, or I discover something about a character. But I do know where the story is going. And then typically I am outlining the next book while I am editing the current book before I send it to my editor. So, and with a series like the Magnolia Sisters, where the initial three sisters, I knew a lot about each of them and where I wanted those books to go from the very beginning so that I could be consistent through all three books.
Yeah. So how do you plot out the characters? Because, like, I know on TV shows they have, like, show Bibles, so that way they know everything about that. But I've always been curious about, like, with books, how do you do that?
We do, actually. I do. And I think a lot of authors who write series, I have a series Bible. So I'm a visual person. So I have Pinterest boards with inspiration for all of my characters and the places they're going. And I do have, I keep a spreadsheet that has sort of the particulars of name, age, date, timeline, all of those sort of things so that because otherwise it's just too much to keep it, at least for me, all in your head. So that's definitely part of what I do. And when I'm crafting a series, again, with the Magnolia Sisters, there are three sisters. So I really wanted to make each of them individuals and different, because then I think there are parts of characters that relate to readers or readers relate to in different ways. So I think it's interesting, that variety of human nature.
Yeah. Okay, so could you share some tips on, like, writing a romance?
Yeah.
Or just writing in general?
Yes. I think my best overall tip for writing in general is doing it, because, I've had a lot of people talk to me about they want to write a book, or they have an idea for a story, and it's like exercising. The hardest thing is getting started and, getting going. Even after more than 30 books, I still sometimes, I turn off, I lock myself out of the internet, and I turn on a timer and sprint with other writers. We'll text or we will tweet each other, and just because sometimes you just need a little inspiration to get going, because writing is a job, and it's a great sort of myth to think the muse just comes down and inspires you, but that's not always the case. Most of us are balancing other things in our lives, whether they're jobs or kids or older parents to take care of. And so I think, my best advice is the discipline of doing it. And then as far as romance, I think the emotional connection, and I think sexual chemistry is obviously very important in romance, and whether you're writing something more explicit or closed door, but the emotion behind it is, to me, where the magic happens.
Yeah, definitely. Well, yeah, thank you for those. So, what are 3 words that you would use to describe your writing?
3 words: hopeful, funny, and emotional.
Those are good words. Yeah, everybody should read these books. I'm so excited. I've got one of yours. The Merriest Magnolia is coming in the mail for me, and I'm so excited to read it.
Well, I hope you love it. And I will say, I think the Merriest Magnolia, it kind of gives a hint in the title. It is a holiday book, and I think there's something really special about books, Christmas or holiday books, because it's such a fun time, and there are so many traditions to explore and great ways to set up the characters in really deeply emotional situations or funny scenes. So I love writing and reading holiday romance.
Oh, yeah. I actually have not read anything in that genre before, so I'm really excited.
Okay, great.
So do you have like any specific like favorite book or just a few favorite books?
You know, like I said, I read a ton. I think that my very favorite go-to historical romance, you mentioned that one, but mine is The Devil in Winter by Lisa Kleypas, and it is just one. Interestingly, that recently I've kind of been rereading some of my favorite books, and that's just one that really has stood the test of time for me. And the series that made me want to be a contemporary romance writer was the Chicago Stars series by Susan Elizabeth Phillips. And again, that was just one that really, at a difficult time in my life, kind of carried me away and, made me laugh and made me smile and gave me the butterflies in the stomach, which as a writer, I think that is the best thing that we can do for readers of this genre. And then generally my very, very favorite in the whole world is Anne of Green Gables. And I wanted to be Anne. I wanted to have red. I think I dyed my hair red when I was younger. I wanted the whole thing.
Did you relate to Anne in those books?
I was really different than Anne. But Anne I was really shy and I was really quiet. But Anne was the type of girl I wanted, like I dreamed of being. So.
Yeah, Anne of Green Gables is just exceptional. I remember when I read it with my mom. When I was a little bit younger, we were talking about it and we're like, oh my gosh, we're both Anne. And like, it just that's the kind of book that just like sweeps you away.
It does. It does. And that's where that cast of characters from Matthew to Marilla, and you feel like you're part of that world. And I think that's amazing.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And it should have given me an indication that romance was going to be my genre, because my favorite parts of Anne, especially the first couple of books, were her fighting and then the sweet parts between her and Gilbert. So,
oh my gosh, Anne and Gilbert.
Yeah.
Yeah, that I think that might be one of the best like fictional relationships ever. It was so sweet.
So sweet, yes.
All right. Well, I think that's all I have for you today. Did you have anything else to add?
No, I just really appreciate being here. This is a very fun conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on. You were an excellent guest.
Thank you.
For Read Between the Lines, my name is Molly Southgate.
I'm Michelle Major.
Let's end this the way all great stories end. Happily ever after. The end. Thank you for listening to Read Between the Lines, a book podcast. This episode is hosted by Molly Southgate. It is edited by Rob Southgate and produced by Southgate Media Group. You can get in touch with the show at readbetweenthelines@gmail.com, or you can send us a voicemail at 708-887-9473. That was 708-887-9473. You can also find us on Instagram at Read Between the Lines Podcast. Thank you so much for listening.